Anyway, with my cruise of Grant Thornton, I decided to write another book on what I was calling integrated reporting. And what's interesting is that I had this idea of integrated reporting, one report, the basic argument being companies should take the financial report which is required if they're listed, in a corporate social responsibility or sustainability report, which isn't required but companies are doing, and put them in one report in an integrated way if they truly had a sustainable strategy. And by a sustainable strategy, I mean a strategy that will enable the company to prosper and create value for shareholders and stakeholders over time, but also takes into account the positive and negative externalities that its operations impose upon society and the planet, because if the planet isn't sustainable, then companies can't be sustainable. So what are they doing to contribute to the sustainability of the planet? And if they truly are, and it's not greenwash or it's not PR, they should more explicitly articulate that in the way they actually report their performance, as opposed to sort of a high-level rhetorical gloss, which is still more commonly the case, that we believe that doing good for other stakeholders around environmental, social, and governance domains is going to contribute to performance for shareholders. I think that's often true, but not necessarily true, and I'll come back to that. So we started doing the research for this book. It was written in a fairly short period of time because I just had this sense that the time was right to get a book out there. And we started to find companies were actually producing integrated reports. Most of them fairly recently. The majority only in the past year or two, when we were writing this book in 2009. And what was striking is that they were in different countries, they were in different industries. You had Phillips in the Netherlands, healthcare lighting company. You had a wonderful company called Natura in Brazil, which is cosmetics and fragrances. You had the first company in the United States was United Technologies Corporation. It's an old diversified manufacturing company that goes back to 1927. It makes air conditioners and Otis elevators and jet engines. It's hardly kind of a new age company, like a seventh generation or a Starbucks or something like that. But despite the diversity of countries and industries, that the reason that they were producing an integrated report was always the same, which was, we're truly committed to sustainability. We think it's key to our strategy and operations, and we think the best way to reflect that is by producing an integrated report. And it's, by the way, it's not just the paper document, it's the web, but I can come back to that. So we talked to people in every company that we were able to identify to the extent we could. And our book, in a sense, is based upon the experience of these companies with an argument as to why we think it's the right thing to do. For some of my academic colleagues, the book is a little controversial. It's not classical research in the sense of a well-defined phenomenon that you can go out and do in-depth case studies and study them for years or look at a large empirical sample. We're looking at a phenomenon that is just beginning to emerge. And the purpose of the book was to understand the phenomenon the best we could, put a highlight on it, and have that book make a contribution to accelerating both our understanding of what it means to do integrated reporting and the adoption of it. We wrote this book from the perspective of a broader action strategy that has some other important pieces which are useful, I think, to mention. It came out, as I said, in March of 2010. A couple of months later, the Global Reporting Initiative had its biannual conference in Amsterdam. And in his opening remarks, Ernst Lindringen, who is the CEO of the Global Reporting Initiative, basically issued a call for three things. The first was mandated ESG reporting by 2015 by all entities, or explain why not. And the second was mandated universal integrated reporting by 2020, or explain why not. And the third was consideration of G4 guidelines. So the current guidelines for G3 for non-financial information, begin to think about how those might be put in a broader context. And I think it's fair to say that the dominant message that emerged out of the conference, I'm not sure what was planned going in, was integrated reporting. And I think a lot of that was driven by the fact that it's an idea whose time has come. I think it's being driven by the fact that the Global Reporting Initiative is quite committed to this, under the leadership of Mervyn King of South Africa, who is the chairman of the GRI. And then interestingly enough, Professor King, in his King 3 report on corporate governance, has called for integrated reporting in South Africa, and it's now mandated. As of June 1st, every company listed on the Johannesburg Stock Exchange has to produce an integrated report. So there was a lot of enthusiasm that was generated at this conference in May. And then in July, there was a meeting held in London of something called the International Integrated Reporting Committee.